Thank you for the great fade out. Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to have you all here with us virtually today for our panel, Building the Bridge to Success, Code Nation and the Future of the Tech Workforce. My name is Ron Summers, and I am the Chief Executive Officer here at Code Nation, and I'll be your moderator today. So, why are we here? At Code Nation, we believe that the tech industry will be stronger if the workforce of tomorrow is more diverse. And we believe technology that better serves everyone can be developed if the culture in the tech industry is more inclusive. We think that exposure to that field of computer science is critical and that real change begins in the classroom. We are exposing young people who are historically excluded from tech to computer science. We do this at a critical stage, which is the high school years. So think grades 9 through 12. And for many, the decision to pursue computer science happens during those extremely formative years. Think about it. The likelihood that someone is going to pursue this pathway happens during that time. And so we believe that if you give students the right amount of exposure and access during that time, you are building a bridge for our students to go from just the idea of computer science to that career in tech. But here's the thing. We know we have much more work ahead of us because for the last 10 years of running Code Nation and trying to build this bridge for students to walk across, we know it's not complete. There are real gaps. There are challenges and barriers along the way. Our vision for the future is to complete the bridge from exposure to computer science education to advanced access to the resources to get there, to inclusion into the field, fully supported by us every single step of the way. Today, we're going to hear from two Code Nation alumni who are in our programs in Chicago and New York, and ultimately chose a path in technology. They'll talk about their journeys from exposure to what they're doing today. We have big goals, but we can't do this on our own, and we never have. We've made intentional choices to have tech professionals who are working in the industry serve as volunteer teachers, teaching our curriculum, but also providing a really clear window into what it's like to be part of the tech workforce. This also creates a bit of a built-in network for students and gives them access to something that we think is so important, social capital. To showcase this, we also are fortunate enough to have two Code Nation volunteers here today to talk about their experience and why they chose to volunteer with Code Nation and also what they've learned along the way. I am so excited to welcome our panelists today. As mentioned, we are welcoming two alums, Diego and Eve. Just if you can, wave for the camera so folks know who you are, and two volunteers, Samir and Dakota. I'm going to pass it to our panelists to share more about themselves and their background. So Diego, Eve, Samir, Dakota, if you can, just simply say your name again, share your pronouns and your current job role and the relationship that you have with Code Nation. You can kick us off, Diego.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. So my name is Diego Cruz. I'm an alumni from Chicago with Code Nation. Currently, I'm actually pursuing a career in tech, looking for that entry-level position. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Diego. Eve, you can kick us off next.
Hello, so my name is Eve Ubita. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am currently a computer technology teacher at Dewitt Clinton High School. I teach 9th grade Intro to Computer Science and 10th grade AP Computer Science. And my relationship to Code Nation is that I am an alum of the organization.
And a volunteer at times, don't forget that. You should give yourself some credit for that. Cody, Samir, whoever wants to go first, you are welcome to.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Samir. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a software engineer at Meta. My relationship to Code Nation, I've been volunteering for a few years now, mostly as a teacher in our weekly fellowship, but also as a mentor in one-off events like hackathons. And this year I also helped organize a fellowship, which was like recruiting volunteers, partnering with the folks at Code Nation, essentially getting the program off the ground.
Thanks, Samir. Cody?
Yeah, my name is Dakota or Cody. I go by both pronouns she, hers. Currently I am a senior front-end software engineer at a company called Sprout Social based out of Chicago, Illinois. And my relationship to Code Nation, I've been volunteering with Code Nation this entire calendar year, starting earlier in 2023 as a volunteer that works in the classrooms with our students, teaching them the introductory curriculum. And then I've also helped out at the hackathon, coaching students there. And then lastly, I serve on our underrepresented genders and tech group in Sprout Social. And we've been having an ongoing partnership with Code Nation to host field trips for our students and different activities like that.
Thank you so much, Cody. And so what we're going to do for this panel is you're going to get to hear from both groups, both our alums and also both our volunteers. And we really want to dive into their pathways, their stories. How did they get there? And we'll kick it off with our alumni. So I have a question for you, Eve and Diego. But before I do that, I just want to read off a couple of stats that I think would really frame this. Folks, do y'all know that 53% of high schools in the United States of America offer computer science education? That number is amazing, but let's remember that doesn't mean it's equitable access for all. The second stat I want to share with y'all is that 4 out of 5 students who pursue STEM-based careers make that decision or that choice in high school. So with that framing, Eve, Diego, if you can, recognizing that there are gaps in this bridge for both students and alums, and despite the challenges that you likely went through in your careers and where you are now, could you share your stories and try to paint a vivid picture for us for how it started, what the journey was like actually living in your shoes, and how you got to the point that you are at now? Eve, will you kick us off?
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for that very immersive and powerful introduction to that. Yeah, I can start off by saying that I joined ScriptEd, Code Nation when it was ScriptEd around my freshman year of high school. Then throughout my journey, I went through from freshman all the way to senior year. And it was actually my senior year that I was able to gain an internship. And I think it was not only the fact that I was able to visit different companies, like about.com, as well as I believe Google, on top of the fact that I was able to actually do the Flatiron School program, given different opportunities and such, which actually bridge that gap for me to see CS as a viable option for my future. And Lord behold, I went to college and I actually started majoring in computer science. And through that pathway, I came around full circle, and I am now instructing high school students on how to use those same techniques that I learned in those years. Oh yeah, I don't think I think you're muted.
Thank you for first letting me know that I'm muted. But Eve, I just have one quick question before we jump to Diego. And I think this is a full circle question. You were exposed to computer science. You fell in love with it. You majored in it. And you even have experience in the field. But now you are a high school teacher teaching students computer science. What made you do that?
Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. I kind of just came through. Yeah. I saw the posting and I saw, hey, that would be pretty cool. And it's being offered through Code Nation, and everything. So I knew also what I was like kind of like gonna be surrounded by. I thought, hey, this is gonna be pretty dope, because not only do they offer the chance to learn coding, but they also offer the experience of, what it would be like if you actually were a coder, like that pre-trial experience. So I applied for it, and luckily I got the job. So yeah, I think I'm happy where I'm at.
So one, you were totally qualified for the job. You were supposed to have that job. And the reason why I just called that out is because even I share something. I was once a New York City public school teacher too, that went from being a dev into the classroom. And I just think there's something beautiful about that experience, having done the work and then sharing it with students. And I think you'll hear more about that when our volunteers speak, but there's nothing like living in the industry and then teaching students to give them the most robust and realistic experience. So Eve, I salute you. So happy with the work that you're doing. Diego, ready to tell your story?
I am. Yeah. So I first started Code Nation when I want to say my junior year of high school. It was their first year coming to Chicago back, I think it was 2019, so right before COVID. Um, so to be completely honest, my mother hates Code Nation. So the reason why is because yeah, I was doing pretty well in high school and I went to Code Nation. I kept hearing you don't need a college degree to be in the tech industry, and that really encouraged me. And with a program like Code Nation to empower me, I said, "Oh well, I don't need college." I The reason why I was a gamble was because I actually had a full ride uh, to to CS to pursue other studies, but I wanted to gamble on myself, and the only reason why I had that confidence was because of Code Nation. I had been in so many different tech offices. I had been around so many amazing people, people that look like me and that really thought like me. Not just, I felt whole for once, especially in this community. So that gave me hope. And just thinking about that, I told myself, I'll give myself a gap year. If there is any program like Code Nation that's endorsed by Code Nation, I'll give it a shot. I will put all my faith into this one program, into this one community. And a year goes by and nothing happened. Luckily, I believe it was Shane Morris. I met him first year with Code Nation. I did both fellowships. I did CLI. I just love every single Code Nation program. And it was Shane Morris who actually introduced me to DPI Tech Chicago. Boom, there's my entrance. Full stack developer apprentice. I was there for 3 months and I gotten to do so many amazing things. I've gotten to volunteer with Code Nation. I've gotten to be a teacher assistant at the University of Chicago. Just so many amazing things that I thought would have never been possible. And then, of course, after my 3-month apprenticeship, I interned earlier this year at a company called SAP. For those that don't know, it's kind of like Salesforce. I got that question a lot while I was in the apprenticeship or the internship. And I was actually there as a consultant role, procurement and external workforce consultant. That was the official title. And, just being in that office and thinking about, that 17-year-old boy, I'm currently 20. So just in that 3-year span, I actually saw myself build something and, manifest everything that I thought was possible. So once the internship was up, I kind of hit a different phase in my tech career path. I hit another blockade and just thinking about, okay, well, where's the next opportunity that I can pursue? I don't know where it is, but I know for a fact that I've built a very strong network. And I know that with the amount of things that I have achieved, with that confidence from Code Nation, I know that anything is possible. So when I apply for the next entry level position, I know I have a lot of people not only backing me, but confidence in myself.
Thanks, Diego. And there's 2 things I want to touch on, and these are words that you use. The first word is whole, and the second word is network. So first, you said that Code Nation made you feel whole. Like being from Chicago and living your experience, why was it so important to feel whole in any program that asks you to walk into their doors?
Of course. Yeah. And you know what? I've actually been in so many different programs. I think it's just the atmosphere that Code Nation builds and the environment that everyone's encouraged to be in. It's really a community of learners, people who are passionate about learning, and also people who are passionate about teaching. I mean, I've been both a student and a volunteer, and I just can say that I love both sides of the coin. Going back to that wholesome feeling, really, I never really I never found my interest until Code Nation. I never knew what was possible and what I could actually build. And just through the curriculum and just through external opportunities, I realize now that there is so much that I can do with myself, and it's just because of code.
And then the second part, and thank you for that, Diego, is network. You said right now, you're not, I wouldn't say you're figuring things out, but you're navigating the next part of your journey. So you said something about that you feel confident that your network is going to show up to you. And this gets back to the social capital piece I talked about earlier in today's panel. How do you think you're going to leverage that network? And what makes you feel so confident the Code Nation is going to come through for you?
Yeah. You know what? I actually have this very vivid memory. I was at a Code Nation networking event, and a former program manager, I think he had just landed some type of role as a data analyst. And, you know, after talking with him, okay, what's career change look like for you? I'm just now, I think I was 18 at the time. I really want to get my foot in the door in the tech industry. And he told me, if you do any program, if you get certified, if you go to college and get some type of degree, come talk to me. And, you know, it was just that I kind of felt reassured in that moment. I know it's just one man that can't guarantee me a job, but I know that that's the amount of that's just the willingness. Every single individual in Code Nation is willing to help their students and also help each other. And that's what I really love about this community.
Thank you so much, Diego. And so, both of you, I just want to say thank you for sharing your stories. Eve, just want to call out, is from New York City, right? That is part of our New York City program. And then Diego was part of our Chicago programs. And just like special shout out to two of the most famous people probably in Code Nation history. One, Shane Morris, our managing director of Chicago. And then, of course, Joe Liz, who also used to manage the New York programs and those teams. So Dakota, let's move to you and let's think about your experience at Code Nation and what it's been like. You've been dedicating so much time and so much energy to this community, and we'd love to hear about why you believe it's so important and how it's impacted you being a Code Nation volunteer.
Yeah, I have absolutely loved my time about volunteering at Code Nation. Literally, if you are a coworker, a friend of mine, anything, people hear about my experiences volunteering all the time. But yeah, I think one of the things that really stood out, like I have always been a really big advocate for increasing diversity in tech, because when I look back at my own career, I've oftentimes been the only woman in the room, in a sea of men. And so I've always wanted to be, you know, part of that change and see, like, make sure that, like, people coming after me, females coming after me, for example, aren't in those same situations where they're not having to be the only person that looks like them in the room. And so that's like, because of that, that's why I was like, oh, let me see if there's any way that I can get involved in making that happen. Like, because before Code Nation, I was primarily just like mentoring other folks. And then I had heard an inkling about this nonprofit in Chicago that does exactly what I was hoping to do. And so that's when I had reached out and was like, I need more information. And I jumped into a classroom like at the end of last school year, which I was like, oh no, like I'm going to come into this super well-established classroom as a brand new person. I don't know if it's going to work out. But it's really blown away all of my expectations. The kids my favorite part has been just like seeing that aha moment, because a lot of the students have been like, never heard about this, never really experienced anything with development. And by me being up there, they can see someone who is very similar to them, has similar interests. I think a lot of times, a lot of the students have been like, oh, like this engineer is going to come in and sort of like just preach at us and it's going to be boring, like they oftentimes I've seen, sort of seen, they haven't said it explicitly, but the feeling has been, like, oh, this is like this older, like stuffy person coming in to sort of lecture me, like, but then like they see me who has, who loves video games just like them, listens to similar music as them, and they're like, oh, like you're actually a lot like me and you can do this. And then when I see that aha moment when they're actually coding and starting to get the concepts, I think that has been one of the things that I'm like, yes, this is why I keep coming back and doing this, on top of wanting to forward like the mission and the vision of Code Nation, is seeing and just coming along and partnering with the students and showing them like this is a very cool way and a new path, because I didn't even know about becoming a developer until honestly I was like my senior year in high school. Honestly, not even that. I think I was in community college when I was like, oh, I could do computer science, and I signed up for a computer science program and just decided that's my major. I don't know what I'm signing myself up for, but I know I like computers and math. So being able to help these students realize that this is a path way earlier than I ever did, I think is my way of sort of like giving back and helping out. So.
And Dakota, know that we are super duper grateful. And just for like folks who may be on this call who may not be aware, Code Nation, we equip students with the skills, experiences, and the inclusive environment that they need to be able to not only just like learn about computer science and tech-driven careers, but to actually make it all the way through. And Dakota said something really important about not seeing like folks who look like her in those initial computer science experience and the desire to give back. And I think that's a major pillar of why our programming is so important, because Dakota, representation matters, right? And by having you in our classrooms, I think that you open up a door for so many students, not only because you're not preaching, but because they can see you and then see themselves. So I just want to say thank you, Dakota. I mean, this is what forces inclusivity, and we appreciate everything that you do. Samir, you are a repeat volunteer, and you're someone who has recruited others to volunteer at your company, Meta. I'd love to hear about like your hopes for a diverse tech workforce, but also how you think Code Nation is part of that solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first on like why diversity matters to tech companies and matters to me as well. I think, we're building products for millions and sometimes even billions of people. And I think it's important to develop empathy for our users. If we can't understand their problems, then how are we going to solve them with technology? And we can always do user research, we can go interview people, but that's never as good as having people who come from diverse backgrounds actually building the products themselves. Those people have the full cultural context, having grown up in a certain community, and so they can truly understand the problems that we're trying to solve. And I can give like a quick example of this from a past job of mine. I was working essentially on an AI chatbot, which we'd rolled out to a bunch of different countries using this automated machine translation. And in one of the flows of this chatbot, we asked people, would you like to get promotional messages? And if they say yes, then they'll get coupon codes from the business. maybe once a week for a few months. So we built this chatbot, we rolled it out, and we were seeing the product performing especially poorly, specifically in Thailand. And it was kind of surprising. Like Thai users were just not opting into these promotional messages at the same rate as other users. So we were trying to figure out what was going on. We looked for bugs that may be affecting users in Thailand, didn't find anything. We did a bunch of like data analysis, sliced and diced different segments of users, times a day, everything. Couldn't see anything there. But then eventually one of my coworkers who grew up in Thailand and was a native Thai speaker tested it. And he told us that our automated machine translation was horribly wrong for the question. So in English, we asked, would you like to get promotional messages? Apparently in Thai, it essentially translated to, would you like to get spammy notifications? And it makes sense why nobody said yes to that. So I think the lesson from that is like having a diverse team is so important. It can help in ways that are sometimes really hard to predict. Like I don't think anyone was sitting down thinking, hey, let's build a diverse team so that we can figure out if our translations are wrong. But we wouldn't have caught it without having a diverse team. And it can really up-level, I think, the entire performance of an organization.
Samir, you have to include that in your TED talk whenever that happens, because it's a wonderful like representation of like why this work matters. Folks, if we are not making sure that the solutions of tomorrow are built by the folks who actually exist in our society and everyone has a seat, we are doing a poor job. And I just think if you really listen to that example, you get to the heart of why representation matters while making sure there are seats at the table for everyone, and why collective think and problem solving is actually going to probably help us solve the challenges of tomorrow. So with that, I have one very, very brief announcement, and it's a sad one. My son's school has called 5 times in the background, and there's an emergency at his school. And so we're going to just do a slight pivot. Elizabeth is going to take over, and she's going to run the Q&A. And I am going to jump off and go make sure that my son is actually alive. But I want to say first to everyone, thank you for being on this panel. I hope everyone enjoys the Q&A session. We put so much work into this, so please ask the tough questions so that we can really get into it. And of course, everyone, I enjoyed my time with you. So sorry I have to jump off early. I'll see you when I see you. Elizabeth, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ron. Well, I was ready to moderate a background of the Zoom. I wasn't ready to chat with my amazing panelists today, but I'm excited to talk with all of you a little bit more. And I want to remind everybody to please share any questions that you might have for any of our panelists or general questions for the group. And then we can direct them to one of the panelists. Please drop those in the chat because we would love to hear from everybody here if there's a topic that they're more interested in. So I think I would like to, let's see, I want to follow up a little bit with Eve first. So Eve, I think one of the great things about including alums like Diego and Eve on our panel today is that they're both representing sort of an alternative pathway. So like Diego talked about his, rebellious decision to not go straight to college. And Eve, you've taken a path where you've chosen to use your skills to really give back to community and teach the next generation. Many of our students aspire to study computer science and enter into tech right away. So I'm curious about sort of the alternate pathways that you both chose. So I know, Eve, you sort of said like this just sort of came across your desk and you were excited to get it and apply and excited that you got it. I'd love to learn more about sort of, is it because you wanted to give back to the community? What are you seeing in the next generation? What is the interest like? Just want to open it back up to you and talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely try to dig a little bit deeper. I've just been thinking about it a little bit more. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, I guess all of these programs and stuff like that weren't really as common, I'd say. Like even when I was just starting out in high school, I know like Code Nation was like very new, like around like a year or two old. So as that was like coming up and everything, it just kind of amazes me the fact now that you have like not like it went from being like an after school activity, something that you had to say, okay, I want to do this and everything, to like yo, it's already offered in the school and everything. And kids still have that choice, but I think that it's kind of cool that it's offered during the day. And I don't know, I see a lot of improvement, not only in the organization, but also in the tech world in general. And I thought, hey, this would be pretty cool. I mean, I would have like some sort of the hang of this a little bit. Did a little bit of volunteering, so I got like a little precursor into everything. I think the main thing that probably motivated me was the kind of impact that my volunteers had. Like someone like Andrew, who like taught me very well, have very close relationship with. And even outside of Code Nation, he actually wrote one of my recommendation letters for college and everything. So codes like connections like that. Yeah. I think stuff like that. Instead of just being a computer science teacher, you're more like a role model, someone to help them, like, I don't know, a figure in their life that they can look up to, which is very much the case for a lot of these students.
Yeah, absolutely, Eve. That's really profound and interesting. I think that as you just spoke to, 10 years ago when Code Nation started its first program in New York, the landscape of access and exposure to computer science at the high school level looked very different. So Ron mentioned a stat. It's obviously higher than it was 10 years ago, which is why Code Nation is really thinking about what does the complete journey for a student look like. It goes beyond just learning to code in a classroom in high school, because that's not enough. Like, we've learned that these connections that you're talking about are actually the things that are propelling students to the next step, right? Those are the things that are the social capital, the networking, the mentorship, somebody else to talk to who might look like them to guide them through. So with that, maybe I can turn it back over to one of our volunteers. Cody, you mentioned that you are on like a subcommittee at Sprout Social. And I'm just curious to hear from you a little bit more about your perspective on diversity in tech and how you think Code Nation might be helping to impact or solve that problem.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been in two different schools now during my volunteering at Code Nation. And the first one was a primarily Hispanic classroom, and this year being primarily Black with some Hispanic students as well. And I feel like, at within just like at Sprout, being part of our underrepresented genders and tech group, like our biggest thing is we want to see, tech be more than a bunch of white men in a room that has been, 10 years ago, whatnot, like growing up, even just like the media, just, the way the media makes out like coders or developers, like, is all just like dudes sitting around a computer like typing and all that sort of stuff. So and being able to go into these classrooms where it is the exact opposite and be like, hey, like, you have the skills, you have the ability, and this is also really cool and really fun. I think and being able to add that has been the most impactful, like in particular in the last school that I volunteered at. We had a student who he was very loud, and whenever he would get bored in the classroom, he would frequently disrupt the other students. And it took a little bit of time for me to sit down with him, and I realized really what it was is that he was grasping these concepts so quickly. And so by sitting down with him and chatting with him and saying like, hey, like, can you walk me through your code, show me what you're doing, and he was like already 3-4 steps ahead of the rest of the classroom, I realized, oh, like, we need to create some extra credit for him and get him, because he was like, hey, this stuff is really easy. Like, oh, like, I'm not really enjoying this because it's like, he had this idea that it was so easy, like, yada, yada, like, I can sort of like blow off steam. Or I was like, hey, like, you know, we took the particular project they were working on was like this Mario game where they had this little GIF of Mario and they had buttons to click, like, you know, jump up, and then when you clicked it, the Mario went up and like got the coin and stuff like that. So I put the challenge to them and I was like, hey, like, you know, what if we add in all these extra buttons, like maybe like look up a GIF of Luigi and maybe like have a button where you can like change out the character, or, you know, we have a grow big, what if we had a grow small, and sort of gave them these extra challenges that I could tell like really helped him and be like, oh, like it isn't just like, oh, I'm completing this homework assignment, but like I can make this my own. And that's one of the things that really like stood out to me during that class, was being able to not just like a lot of the other students were like, oh, this is really cool and I'm enjoying it, but also being able to do that individual work with the students, I think is also really unique. And it helps because we have multiple engineers in the classroom. So while one engineer is sort of teaching the main curriculum, the others can go around helping out the students and continuing to build those personal relations that I know I would have loved to have when I was their age.
Yeah, Cody, we hear that pretty often from our students and alums, that, or from our volunteers rather, that they are giving back partially motivated by the fact that they didn't have the same thing when they were learning code or considering going into a tech career. So I'd like to turn it over now to Samir again, hear from you, Samir. So Samir has been an amazing advocate for us at Meta, and we consider him our sort of representative of many of the ways that we've engaged with Meta, because he's helped us get plenty of volunteers. So Samir, could you share a little bit more about how Meta and CodeNation have worked together, and what you're seeing as the motivation? How are you getting your colleagues excited to give back, and just share more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a quick disclaimer before I start. I'm not officially representing Meta here. I'm just speaking based on my own experience as a software engineer in the tech industry, so not on behalf of Meta. But I think, you know, when I was initially looking for volunteering opportunities a few years ago, it was literally me going on Google looking for like tech volunteering for, you know, for like high schoolers. And I did that for a few days of searching until I found CodeNation, and then that's when I reached out and we were able to get things going. But I kind of had a hunch that there are other people like me that were looking for similar volunteering opportunities, like other engineers in the industry who are seeking this out, but, you know, maybe have not put in the legwork to like go find a nonprofit, or maybe they tried and, you know, they weren't, the timing was off or something like that. And so I kind of had this hunch and I was like, okay, let me like start asking around a little bit internally, see if there's any interest. And it turns out that I think a lot of engineers, especially once you're a little bit more established in your career, start to look for these things, because you look back on your own journey and you realize that you benefited a lot from mentors over the years. And so you want to find some way to give back as well. And so my goal in trying to like recruit volunteers has mostly been just making it like as easy as possible for people to like be connected to CodeNation. I think that's involved like advertising, like internal advertising, word of mouth, all of that. But essentially just trying to find the people that have probably been thinking for a few years, like, hey, maybe I should go volunteer. That would be a cool thing to do. And just letting them know that there's this opportunity that's available. It's very well structured, much better structured than anything I was a part of back in high school. And, you know, you can start getting involved today. There's all kinds of time slots available. We can make it work in your schedule, and we can get you going as soon as possible.
Thank you, Samir. I'm so happy to hear that you know, it's enticing, and I'm glad you found us on Google. That makes me really happy too, as someone who handles a lot of the marketing for CodeNation. I'm glad that you were able to come across our information there. So I think I'd like to hear again from Diego, because I think Diego, I've had the pleasure of hanging out with Diego in person here in Chicago, and I am so excited by his story, because I think he's representing something that I believe to be really unique to the tech industry, which is this desire to give back full circle, right? So, you know, Cody and Samir, right? Like, you've been on this journey, you've done the work, you've done the studying, you're in the industry now, you're in the career, and you're choosing to give back. And Diego represents an even bigger full circle because he started with us as a student. So in addition to pursuing a career in tech, and maybe everyone on the call heard he's looking. So if anyone knows anybody, right, please, Diego is qualified and awesome. Please hire him. But I'd love to hear, Diego, about sort of what is your perspective as someone who has been through the entire cycle, started as a Code Nation student, was an alum. How did we support you as an alum? What happened? You know, what's been happening after that? How is being a volunteer helping you build your network? Like, I just like to, because you really are a representation of that whole bridge that Ron was talking about.
Yeah, no, this whole circle moment. I get pretty emotional when I think about it too. Like whole circle. I remember attending the first ever hackathon at in Chicago for Code Nation. And at the second one at DPI, where I was apprenticing, I mentored the team that actually won first place. So like it really comes whole in like a very beautiful way. But yeah, the reason why I kind of like staying connected with Code Nation is just because um I really don't know. You just find something you love and you want to stick with it. Oh. I think the mission is beautiful, and even when I think about pursuing, another side of the tech industry, I'm sorry, I'm actually kind of lost for words. Um, can you repeat the question? Just one
Yeah,
more
I was just curious, what has your experience been like at, you've been supported at sort of many steps of your journey by Code Nation, and how has that sort of impacted you overall?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the confidence. That's what this program gave me. As for support, I know for a fact if I ever needed some type of advice in the tech industry and at some point in my career, I could easily contact, Shane, Kelsey. I can name off a handful of people who I can just easily email. I mean, Molly. Hi, Molly. And I just get to meet more great people. I think, when you're a kid doing this program, you look at volunteers as kind of like teachers. And then once you go into, that teaching space, you start to see them as your peers or potential peers or, possibly friends. And I just think about, I'll never forget my first time volunteering and connecting with a fellow volunteer about prefabricated homes. And, I just felt very old at that moment. But, that sense of community is what really, really draws me in. And I think it kind of opened my eyes as well. I actually really love teaching Echo. And when I think about, that network that I was able to build through that confidence, you know, like going back to DPI, I've been given opportunities to say that they've given me an opportunity to come back as a teacher's assistant for their curriculum. So, I mean, there's so many different doors, different pathways that I want to go to. I don't, when I initially took this leap, there was kind of just any opportunity I have to go along with. And now I feel like there's so many different doors that I get to walk through. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Diego. So you touched on something that I think really makes Code Nation as strong as it is. So for those who may not know, we just celebrated 10 years of Code Nation. Like Eve was saying, he joined the program when it was called something different, called Script Dead. But 10 years of this mission and this work nonetheless. And what's been so interesting about that is the community that has formed, right? So within the first couple of years, we only had a certain number of alumni. They hadn't gone out and gotten the jobs yet. But now, because of the tenure of the organization, we now have this incredible, huge community of people that are ready and willing to support one another on their own journeys, which is what I think, like you're saying, Diego, giving you the confidence, knowing that there are lots of doors that are open. It's because you know so many people that have gone down so many different pathways. Like we were talking about, the complete bridge for a student from early exposure from the first time to landing the job. There's a lot of stuff that happens in between. And our goal is to really be there at every step of the journey and support students, whether it's something Code Nation is doing directly or these like serendipitous meetings that are happening between mentors and students and volunteers. And maybe they soon become peers, which is like a really exciting thing as well. Ultimately, like Diego also touched on, our mission, which has sort of remained unchanged. We're unapologetically committed to not only providing economic mobility for our students, but making the future tech workforce more diverse, which is what we were sort of focused on talking about today. So I'd like to turn it back to our volunteers who are currently working in the tech industry and have both touched on the topics of why diversity is so important. I'd like to hear from them about what their hopes are for the future of the tech workforce and how their work with Code Nation could play into that. And Cody or Samir can take that topic.
Okay, do you want to go, Cody, or should I?
You can go. Yeah, I was like, oh, I'll wait till whoever unmutes first, and then of course we unmuted at the same time.
At the exact same time, obviously. Yeah, I can go. So I think in terms of like hopes for the tech workforce in the future, ideally it's as diverse as the users that we're building for. That's the goal. And I think, maybe even a little bit more diverse would be nice, just to like overcorrect for many decades of it not being so diverse. But I think, if we can really, for me, I think the main piece is getting to students when they're in high school and making them aware, especially like the very, the ambitious or like really, the students that really want to do something big, and they're deciding between a bunch of different careers. Maybe tech is just one of them. Making them aware that there are actually people out there that get jobs as software engineers or just work in tech more broadly. These jobs do exist. They're real. And just solving that discovery piece, basically. I think that is kind of like the first step for me of what we're trying to drive here. And obviously also helping them develop the technical skills and some of the other skills to really thrive once they get to college, regardless of what they want to study, if they want to enter the tech workforce later on. But I think if we're doing our job right, the first piece will be discovery and just awareness of, that this is an industry out there you can go join. And eventually that'll carry through. I think if we can catch them at high school and they, maybe they major in computer science or something related in college, or they just, go get a job directly out of high school, eventually we will see the tech company diversity improve. And I think that'll show up in the kinds of things that we build and how it's able to empower other people. So that's the goal that I see. Cody, anything to add there?
No, you hit the nail on the head.
So something else that I have heard from working with our community of students and alums like Eve and Diego is the importance of seeing people that look like them in the jobs they want to pursue. And I would like to hear a little bit more about how working with volunteers like Samir and Cody also impacted you and again, that strength of that community. I think both of you sort of mentioned a couple people that you met early on. I'd love to hear more about that in the community piece. And I'll put it out to either of you can answer.
Yeah, I can go ahead. I was gonna say that I definitely think it did influence me, kind of showed me that, hey, people, this guy's pretty cool. He looks like me, and he's also doing this. He's a software engineer at such and such company. I think I more so identified with not only people that looked like me, but had like similar interests to me. I remember our volunteer like really like video games and anime and stuff like that. So he would bring his old N64 to class, and we would have a whole day where we just game and eat food and chill and everything. So that's something that I kind of identified with, and it kind of sent like an idea of like a culture in my head for what these companies are like. Because I associated him with the company, of course. I think as I got a little bit older and everything, I kind of saw the more professional side of things. But I think that foundation where I built like the relationship personality, the personality, and then as I matriculated into college and I kind of saw, okay, but this is like the real work behind it too. Kind of just built like my whole worldview to what it is now.
I'm going to follow up. I have one follow-up question, Eve. So Samir was just talking about the importance of introducing Codenation students to the discipline of computer science in high school. And is that along the lines of what happened with you? And curious your thoughts on how impactful that is, introducing it at that level of education.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I think the thing that like hit hardest was the idea of that you have to be able to problem solve through a lot of these like problems that you'll face when you're coding, when you're learning to code, when you're making your own projects, being stuck on hours and hours on like one like small problem in your code, coding being 90% debugging with 10% actually writing new lines and everything, those fundamental like things. And like, yeah, it's funny. It's because it's like you can relate. Those kind of like fundamental ideas of what coding is, I think kind of drove that discipline as Samir was talking about how you would act as a coder and what you would really be expected to do.
Thank you. We actually have a question that came in, and I am going to direct it towards Diego. So Diego, you talked about an alternative pathway, right? So not going straight from high school into college, into a job, and just speaking about what that experience is like, and then how you're developing your skills in that pathway.
Yeah, of course. I'll definitely say it's very scary. um, it's a gamble. It's scary. You really I'd say you have to have some type of network built before you think about doing what I did. I wouldn't recommend it, certainly. But going from that high school mindset to the workforce, you just mature a lot rapidly, I would say, at least. When I was in my apprenticeship program, I was the youngest person in the room. When I was volunteering, I was the youngest volunteer in the room. So if you feel like, if you're really looking for, I want to say like an accelerated pathway into maturity, doing that is, I mean, going straight into the tech industry that's exactly what is going to happen to you. I even learned quite a bit about the corporate side of things. I think when doing a program like Codenation and a tech apprenticeship, a lot of it is people wanting to grow and develop. And I think when I signed my internship for SAP, I was no longer in that environment. I was in a corporate office with certain expectations, with certain deadlines. And, it was right then and there where I kind of had to reassess. I kind of thought, well, I do love this. I do love Codenation. I do love coding, but being in the tech industry of things, just that, I kind of found myself questioning as well. So when I look at like other opportunities, I wouldn't say it's common for there to be, a coding position that enables you to teach, but you kind of get that outlet with Codenation, especially through volunteering. So don't be afraid to expand your network. Don't be afraid to try new things. Matter if you know no one else, especially when you volunteer at Code Nation, everyone is so friendly. But I'd say if you're willing to risk that accelerated pathway, go for it. You will never forget it. I certainly never forgot it. Just for 5 months straight going into an office, being on a pathway that led to a full-time position. Unfortunately, it wasn't for me. But I think about, okay, well, if there's any other type of position in the tech industry that I would like to fill, as I mentioned before, that TA position at DPI, I mean, there's another opportunity for me that I built, and that's what I will say. Especially when you do that, you have to really build your own opportunities. Network, stay connected, and don't be afraid. And I mean, really, don't be afraid to message any volunteer on LinkedIn. Every volunteer is willing to help you. Every single one. I'll never forget the first time I messaged a volunteer on LinkedIn, and he actually met with me and taught me algorithms. It's a very beautiful thing.
I'm seeing Cody like nod up and down, like, yeah, like she's ready. She's ready to field questions from anybody in the network. Yeah, you hit on a couple of things that I think are really important to iterate, right? So the importance of that community being there to support you on an alternative pathway, right? So again, like the strength of the Code Nation community and how it's shown up for you in your journey, I think is huge. I'm also hearing a little bit of this entrepreneurial mindset, like you need to go out and build your own opportunities. And those are things that we are integrating into our curriculum and making sure our students are leaving with. And also the value in the lesson of knowing what's right for you and what's not, right? Even the students that we are teaching computer science to in an intro level may decide like, hey, this isn't for me, but that exposure piece is still just as important so that they're going out and pursuing careers and disciplines that, they're really passionate about. So, it's okay if an opportunity doesn't work out for you, but, there's a lot of value still in learning that. So I think that we have about 2 minutes left. So we are closing out our hour together. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everybody who was joining us today. I would love to hear from the group in general, and probably directed mostly towards our volunteers again. So what can Code Nation do to better support the partnerships that we have with the companies? What can Code Nation do to better support our students and alumni coming from, 2 alums here that we've done our best to support? We really want to make sure that community stays strong. So I'm just going to let maybe one person give a quick answer. Does anybody want to jump in?
Yeah, I can go here.
Great.
I think so. Code Nation already does a great job of this, but I think we can do even more around really fostering the strong network. The cool thing about a network is the power of it grows faster than its size. Like it's not a linear growth. When you add one person to a network of 1,000 people, it grows significantly more because now that one person is connected to every one of those other 1,000 people. And so just fostering those connections, I think is something that we can really dig deep on. And it's kind of like a little club, basically, once you join Code Nation, as whether you're a student or a volunteer or you're on the staff, we're all connected now. We're all part of this club and we're all looking out for each other. And so that's something that I think we can, we all have to fall back on going forward. And I'm really excited to see the network continue to grow.
Thank you. Those are perfect closing words. Thank you so much, Samir, Cody, Diego, Eve. Thank you for your time today, for sharing your stories and perspectives with us. With that, I'm going to close it out. If we can all say goodbye, and thank you to our panelists. Again, thank you for joining us today to learn more about Code Nation.